Look at that. China, first row. China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers.
That's going to be announced very soon, and we'll be discussing it.
US President Donald Trump is backing down. His tariff war is unraveling, forcing him to retreat. The US has announced yet another exemption, and this time it is China that is getting relief. Chinese exports to the United States face a 145% tariff, but now a range of Chinese electronics are off the hook. This includes stuff like smartphones and laptops. They won't face the 145% import tax. Interestingly, the pullback was not announced by President Trump. It was done by the US Customs. They released an exemption notice, a notice stating which products were exempt from tariffs. And it came as great news for big tech. They can now breathe easy. Without this relief, prices of gadgets would have skyrocketed. Everything from memory chips and solar cells to semiconductors would have cost more. There were about 20 product categories, all targeted by Trump's tariffs. Their prices were set to surge. Companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Nvidia had raised concerns. In fact, Apple was resorting to extreme measures. They airlifted 1.5 million iPhones from India. Apple did it in record time to beat the tariffs, to make sure that the phones were shipped before the tariffs kicked in. We told you about this last week. These iPhones were made in India. Usually it takes 30 hours for customs to clear such consignments, 30 hours. But this one was fast-tracked. It was dispatched within 6 hours, all because Apple wanted to beat Trump's tariff deadline. But for the moment, they can relax. Washington has given some relief, even though it's temporary. The US president says no one can escape his tariffs. Let me quote, "There was no exception. Nobody is getting off the hook." This is what he wrote on Truth Social. He reminded everyone that other duties on Chinese products still remain, like the 20% tariffs related to fentanyl. This was announced soon after Trump took office. And now he's planning a new set of tariffs, a different category altogether. Listen to this.
The tariffs will be in place in the not distant future because, as you know, like we did with steel, like we did with automobiles, like we did with aluminum, which are now fully on, we'll be doing that with semiconductors, with chips, and numerous other things. And that'll take place in the very near future.
The US president has ordered a national security investigation. It will focus on semiconductors and the entire electronic supply chain. Trump's Commerce Secretary has confirmed this. That's Howard Lutnick. He says new tariffs are coming in 2 months, and they will target high-end imports from China.
Remember, those products are going to be part of the semiconductor sectoral tariffs, which are coming. So all those products are going to come under semiconductors, and they're going to have a special focused type of tariff to make sure that those products get reshored. We need to have semiconductors, we need to have chips, and we need to have flat panels. We need to have these things made in America.
So Trump and his team are going out of their way to convince everyone that this is not a retreat. It is more like a reshuffle, that their policy direction remains the same, but it's amply clear what this move is about. The US is taking a strategic timeout, and it comes after Trump's U-turn last week, when he froze all the tariffs for 90 days, all but China. He said America's trade partners will face a blanket tariff for 10% for 3 months, nothing more than that, only 10% till July, but he did not extend this relief to China. On the contrary, he raised tariffs on China at least twice in 2 days. By the end of it, US tariffs on China stood at a whopping 145%. And why was China singled out? Because they chose to retaliate. They hit back at the US with tariffs of their own. So Trump said China was forcing his hand. It makes no sense, but that's what he said. And he raised tariffs to 145%. He also said that China wants a deal with him, but they don't know how to ask for it. That was last week. Now, suddenly, he's climbing down, basically relenting under pressure. Because Trump's tariffs crashed the markets. They caused losses worth trillions of dollars. Wall Street was up in arms. CEOs were predicting a recession and investors were losing money. It took all of 8 days for Trump to shift course. The White House has tried to spin it as smart and strategic. But the world is not buying this spiel. America's credibility has taken a hit, investor confidence is falling, the dollar has tanked to a 6-month low, and Trump's utterances are keeping investors on edge. The president is playing hopscotch with the economy, jumping from one threat to another, only to stumble and retreat.
Greeting you with aloha and namaste.
I love India.
Presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India, what we saw in Kashmir.
How do you see Trump's America?
Yes, the current administration behaves differently from the previous administration.
Are you saying that there are foreign powers who are trying to bring down the current government in Syria?
Exactly.
Iran, maybe Russia too.
Prime Minister Modi committed to South-South, cooperation.
Not over 50%.
Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.